and he's going to house it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your NASCAR betting and DFS home. I am your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me to break down the Xfinity 500, all of our favorite early bets prior to qualifying and just some initial thoughts, as well as recap all that was the Dixie Vodka 400 back at Homestead. It's Brian Twining. What's up, Brian?
What's up, Kyle? Yeah, I kind of wish I was in Miami for that race because I would have definitely had a few vodka tonics in my hand after watching Austin Dillon finish where he did and crushing my best bets again. I cannot believe we were talking prior to the show. We only have 2 more races left in the 2022 season.
Yep.
What a season it's been. So I am definitely going to live up this weekend. It might get a little bit crazy on the betting card these last 2 weeks.
Well, way my betting card's gone the last couple of weeks, I might need to fire a lot just to kind of play catch up. It's been a bloodbath outside of the one race we were at in Vegas, but it's been a fun season. I think we've learned a lot. I think obviously we'll get to do some recaps. I think we were just talking before recording this show about some initial thoughts for kind of some off-season content and as we look ahead to the 2023 season. But if there's stuff you guys want to see, let us know on Twitter or let us know down in the comments. Your thoughts. We appreciate everybody who's been along for the ride this season, been commenting, been subscribing, been liking all of our videos. It's really been a nice ride. But as Brian mentioned, we got this week, we have Phoenix next week, and the championship will be determined. Obviously Joey Logano is there. It seems like probably Chase Elliott and our guy Ross Chastain are looking pretty strong to make the Final Four. And then probably depending on who wins this week and kind of how the rest of the race shakes out, will determine everything. But first, let's recap our DraftKings lineup. Once again, I'm going to have to throw it up on here like this because old DraftKings still has my account frozen from when I tried to update a lineup in Vegas. You guys are truly the best, DraftKings. It's a wonder your stock is continuing to go into the shitter. Nobody can figure out why, because customer service is top notch. Interesting week for us, Brian. Probably not the best week, and honestly might be an okay thing that our lineup didn't get entered into the race.
Yep.
First, I guess as we kind of recap the race overall, Kyle Larson gets it done. It looked like one of the best cars all day. I will say Martin Truex could have absolutely won that race had Kyle Larson not spun him out into the pits. Larson continues to be kind of a turd. And I could see why there's a lot of sentiment that it isn't the biggest fan of him. It's something about people named Kyle. Between Busch and Larson, they're just kind of Weasley, whiny, drivers that people don't really like. But it was interesting to see him kind of rebound in a good way.
I will say Martin Truex Jr. did take some of the blame for that incident, saying he didn't really get a good view of his pit box because he said, I guess at that stage of the night, just the sun is shining directly in their eyes. So, it was interesting. I didn't see any tire lockup by Martin Truex Jr. I did not see a quick jerk of the wheel either. So, one could guess if they're only going 60, 70 miles per hour, their brakes are a lot better than our regular cars that he would have been able to stop in the pit box, in my opinion. So I don't know.
Yep. But it was good to see old Marty return to form. He looked really good.
He's looked pretty good.
Ended up managing a 6th this week or last week, I guess. Our guy Ross, once again, right there. Second straight week, second place.
I was so hoping that he wrecked. I don't want to see anybody get hurt, but at least put the bumper to him or, just push him up the track. Do what Larson did to Bubba a couple of weeks ago to maintain the lead.
He's gone from being way too aggressive at the beginning of the season to way too like passive. He needs to find that happy medium. So we can talk about this lineup a little bit. Tyler Reddick also looked really good at points, but did not end up finishing the race where we'd like him to finish. Denny was fine, started 14th, finished 7th. Solid race for him. Austin Dillon, as you mentioned, was a real winner.
Incredible.
Finishing inside the top 5 with a 4th overall.
He's been good coming down the stretch here. Like, he's looked really good. And it's almost like ever since they announced the acquisition of Kyle Busch coming next year, maybe there's some sort of like communication going on between those two. I don't know what is allowed in NASCAR, but with Busch not being in the playoffs anymore and Dillon also being eliminated, I would venture to guess that maybe he's getting some pointers or something, because he's looked pretty damn good coming down the stretch here.
Yep. And of course, the week I go all in on Eric Jones and get excited about him, he decides that actually I'm going to finish a few laps down in 30th overall. Oh, and then we'll look at the betting card here, but old Chase Briscoe, my God, it was a rough week. So DraftKings was fine. I will share the betting sheet here. Avert your eyes if you are squeamish, as this is not pretty. Share screen window. Look at all that gross red. Logano, Kyle Busch, Chase Briscoe, and Ross Chastain were my outrights. The only one that really felt like it had a chance was Chastain, and once again, kind of got up there but not strong. Fading Martin Truex was pretty dumb because Truex looked good, and his history at the track definitely dictated that you should probably be on him and not fading him. But it hadn't been a season. I was expecting Kyle Busch to keep it going after the amazing run at Vegas, and well, that was not the case. And then obviously Briscoe getting last place doesn't help anything. I did hit a best bet, Cindric over Gragson, so that was nice. Shouts to Cindric. And then Briscoe didn't get the top 10. Eric Jones didn't get the top 10 or the top 5 after being awesome at this track and being really, really strong. Fading John Hunter Nemechek was a nice move on our part, Brian.
It got scary there at the end, though, because Gragson ran into some issues late as well that got Nemechek on the same lap as him, and he only finished 2 spots ahead of him, but that play definitely paid off.
Yep. And then we'll review Brian's card with a little more green. Obviously, Hamlin and Chastain did not come to fruition, but the Austin Dillon top 10, 3-1 odds, goes 5 units on it, is a freaking smash.
That was
fantastic call, Brian. It didn't look great on the midpoint, but man, he really brought it home. And you know, if you do imagine if you even got a top 5 in there, that would have been another nice bet. But really, really good bet there. And then your matchups were pretty solid. Blaney over Logano, Chastain over Logano, and Hamlin over Reddick. Cash. And then Gragson over John Hunter Nemechek for another 5-unit play. Brian,
I think the most disappointing bet for me, though, is the Christopher Bell top 10 that didn't come to fruition. He had been incredible coming into this weekend. He had some issues. I mean, Toyota in general, outside of Gibbs and Busch, was, I don't know, they were okay. I just could not believe that he ran so poorly during this race, and now he's put himself into another basically must-win situation to get into the championship for.
Yeah, and he looked good. Like, he qualified well. We were talking about him on Saturday, and he was just Sunday was just not his day.
And I mean, he almost got there. He finished 11th, but I think he still finished like a second or so behind Daniel Suarez for 10th. But it took him making a crazy push towards the end, or the last 10 laps or so, where I think he was like 16th, and he was able to get to that 11th spot. But that wasn't really ever gonna hit, and I was pretty disappointed to see how he ran.
Yeah. So it was overall frustrating week, but we move on. We have 2 races yet to go, so let's dive into it and let's see where we can find some fun numbers this week. I think it's going to be an interesting week. I think there's some compelling names for sure. Back to Chase Elliott dominating once again. He is your favorite. 6.5 to 1. Obviously, Brian and I don't love betting favorites, but this may be the week to do it. And he is a compelling option this week.
Yeah, I actually have Elliott on the card this week. He's been really good at Martinsville. He's won, I think, each of the last 4 stages 1 and 2 in the last 2 races at Martinsville, although he's finished outside the top 10 in both of those events. So that's kind of interesting to see. But prior to that, I think it's like 3 out of 4 top 5 finishes. So this is a track that he runs really well at. I mean, he's been driving strong. And coming into this race, he has 3 consecutive, I think, finishes outside the top 14. So this is not a spot where he can lay back. He's going to have to get aggressive. He's going to have to run near the top. And I mean, considering at the beginning of the season, we were having guys like 3 to 1 or 4 to 1 to win races. You're getting Elliott at 6.5. I think that's a good number, especially knowing it's probably going to shrink if he qualifies well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see too, because obviously when we ran this the first time, it was a Saturday night race. Now we have a Sunday morning race. So we'll see kind of how the track adjusts based on that run. But yeah, I think Elliott makes a hell of a lot of sense.
And one more thing I did want to add, I almost forgot about this. He's led 185 or more laps in 3 of the last 4 races here. So he's used to running in the front at this track.
Yep. And he is one of the big locks to make it to the Final Four. So it would not shock me in the slightest for him to finish the season strong, get a win here, and have a really good chance to win the championship. Beyond him, we have Denny Hamlin at 7 to 1. We have William Byron, who won the night race last time we were here at 7 or 8 to 1. Ryan Blaney 8 to 1, 8.5 to 1. Are we really going to go a full season without Ryan Blaney winning a race that actually is part of the actual season and not just the All-Star race? And then Joey Logano is kind of the last guy who's pretty much inside 10 to 1 across the board. So beyond Chase Elliott, are any of these guys compelling options to you?
I'm going to say a couple of names this week. You're going to think I'm absolutely crazy and I'm a psychopath, and it's extremely gross for myself. But
it's not Ryan Blaney.
I prefer Logano to Blaney this week. It's just so hard getting to Blaney at 8 to 1 number when he hasn't been able to put together an entire race all season.
Yeah.
Logano's been incredible at Martinsville. He's locked into the next round, so it'll be interesting to see that he can be extra aggressive here and not worry about potentially wrecking or, crashing here because he already knows he's into the championship 4, regardless of what his race turns out to be. So why not go for the win? And he was on record last week of saying the same thing. Like, he's going to race for the victory here, knowing that he could potentially eliminate or keep somebody else out of the playoffs that he doesn't want to get there by winning the race. So I'd prefer to get to him at 9 to 1 than Blaney, who cannot put together an entire race.
Yep. And Logano obviously finished second when we raced here last in April. Also did really well at Richmond, another short track. Led 222 laps, was number 1 after stage 2, and then ended up finishing 6th. So I think Logano makes a hell of a lot of sense, and I think could be someone that finds a home on my card. As we go to the next range, we saw it last week with Martin Truex. I think this is the week he gets the W and kind of throws a wrench into a lot of the playoff points. A 10 to 1 number is really nice. I'm not touching the 850, but 10 to 1 on Truex I think could make a lot of sense. After all, it is Martinsville. It is Marty party time. Beyond him, we have Christopher Bell at 11 or 12 or 13. Kyle Larson, 11 to 13 as well. Ross Chastain between 12 and 14. And then there's another drop off. So of like these 4 names, Brian, are you with me on Truex? Do you like Kyle Larson or Chastain? What are your thoughts? Anybody jumping out to you there?
Well, before I even go down the board anymore, I think it is interesting to note that I think it's something like 6 of the last 7 fall Martinsville races have been won by drivers that were still in the playoff picture. So I don't know like how much you can take from that, especially with a new car. It's a new season. Like, we've seen some wacky things happening, but it is interesting to note. So like for me, I almost feel as if for instance, a Christopher Bell over a Martin Truex Jr., the teams are going to push for that driver who is in the playoffs to potentially get into the championship four to win the race over the guy that isn't.
Yep.
And,
Nope.
and Martin Truex being a veteran that he is, I mean, I know he hasn't won a race this year, so it'll be interesting to see if he'd be willing to give up that spot, but I would prefer to buy into the extra units with Christopher Bell than go to a Truex at 10-1,
Yeah, I could see that, especially if they're they're right by warning 1, 2, or 2, 3. I could see them swapping, pushing, and getting their guy into the playoffs. So I don't hate that.
Like, it'd be interesting. I mean, if you just the last guy on the board, however, a Kyle Busch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody is watching that race for the championship on USA Network, but on the most recent episode, there's a lot of revealing stuff that he says about his relationship with JGR, how he feels kind of spurned. So I could see him being the guy that creates chaos and says F you to the team if they're trying to tell him to move over for another JGR driver.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how this relationship is coming to an end after such a, he was so important to them and got them such.
He basically built them into the contender that they are right now.
Yeah, and now they're like, "Oh, we're done with you. On to the next."
I mean,
reminds me of a veteran quarterback or something. Let's keep it rolling. As we go along, Kyle Busch is compelling. Kevin Harvick is also pretty compelling. It might be the week of the olds, Brian. I know.
The old fogies are coming back.
The senior citizens are out for their early dinner, and in terms of scheduling, this works a lot better than their late race where they're falling asleep at the wheel. But Harvick makes a lot of sense, and then we have Tyler Reddick at 20 or 25, which is pretty wild to see. Obviously, he hasn't been as strong on short tracks, but for a guy that's usually at least in the teens, if not inside double digits, like, to be priced this way is pretty wild. And then your old buddy Brad Keselowski, there's a 30-1 hanging out there. Brian, are we going to get on board and find a way to pencil that into the betting card?
All right. So as I said earlier when I was talking about Logano, it was going to be gross, but when we've talked about this a few weeks in a row now, there's always a guy who seems to have odds that are the outlier, and Brad Keselowski has not looked to be competitive for a win in any race this year, but his number is kind of there at that like median point where it's like, hey, this guy runs extremely well here. He's driving really well coming into this weekend. And at 30-1 for an RFK team that is kind of hitting their stride over those last few races, especially since the playoffs started, I don't mind if you want to go there for a small unit play. Like, Keselowski is the kind of driver that would be aggressive enough to move his way to the front and push people out of the way and not care about the playoff standings.
Yeah. Looking at his results this year at short tracks, it has been a lot of qualifying well and kind of moving back, a la Christopher Bell. But no, I think he does make some sense, and I think being a short track, anything beyond probably Keselowski is a no-go for me this week. What about you?
If I like Keselowski, I wouldn't mind going with a Buescher at a 50-1, but that's like an extreme dart throw. I think AJ Allmendinger is kind of intriguing at that 50-1 number over at Caesars. Like, we talked about it when he signed the contract for have a full-time ride next year. You saw it immediately. It's like the stress was lifted off of him. He's driving a lot better. He's not as worried about what he's going to be doing next year. He ran incredibly well last week. Like, I think Allmendinger is somebody who doesn't necessarily have the greatest history here, but he always runs really well at the kind of driving tracks like road courses, and Martinsville is known for it being very unique short track. So I think Allmendinger is somebody that could pop here.
The other name I did want to mention is Eric Almirola. He got, what did he get? Second, or qualified second. I was just looking at it. Last time, let me see. Yeah, so he qualified second, ended up finishing 8th. Last time we were here at Richmond, qualified 32nd, still got an 8th. And then at Bristol, I was just looking at it. Not qualified on the pole and then got 28th. So
He led
pretty,
36 laps during that race too.
yeah,
So
pretty interesting to see him pop kind of at all the short tracks. So he could be interesting. And then your guy Austin Dillon, but those are probably more like, let's look at top 5s, top 10s with them, and not force outrights that don't need to be. So let's go to the top 10 odds and see what kind of value we can have. Obviously, some of these guys, the price is going to be
ridiculous.
Aggressive, so we will not get to it, but we will find value as we always do. Kyle Busch is kind of interesting. Your boy
So the
Dinger,
Allmendinger number, it's hard to get there at even money. I would prefer it to be that plus 140 if you do have access to Bet Rivers, which is kind of a little bit lesser of a sports book in terms of accessibility for people, but I don't mind that. The Brad Keselowski number at plus 105, I'm going to go against everything in my nature, and I'm going to add that to the card. I think he has a strong weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask if you preferred Keselowski to Dinger, but that question has been answered. Austin Dillon plus 150, is that compelling enough to you, or is that seemingly too short? Or should
I added it too. I actually those next 3 guys right there, Keselowski, Dillon, and Buescher and Almirola are all on my card for their top 10 numbers. You'll notice the top 10s are pretty short this week, so I think there's not a lot of like good data out there, I guess, for the sports books to go on, especially in this new car. So you're not going to find a ton of value right now. I definitely think there will be some value post qualifying, but as of right now, like I like all 4 of those guys to potentially top 10, and to, like I said, I have a little bit of cushion here since the All-Star break, so I'm going to get a little wild and throw a few darts this week.
Cool. Sounds like I need to be patient, let you drive your car into the wall, and I'll cross the checker, get the checkered flag.
Yeah, you'll notice the numbers, they take a big jump, and
around Cole Custer and Ty Gibbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting this week for sure.
I mean, Suarez is somebody who could do well at plus 185, but he's been bad at short tracks. Like even if you go down further along the board, I think the only person, I was doing some pre reconnaissance here, Justin Haley at plus 850. He's been bad at short tracks too, but Colleague Racing has looked better of late. I think he could do something here if he stays on track and he doesn't pop a tire or get involved in a wreck. And which is also something, I know I'm talking a lot. There was only 4 cautions here during the spring, with 2 of them coming by way of accident or like a crash. So it'll be interesting to see if we get a similar amount of like clean racing where they just go straight through the stages. I know that it was a little bit of a shorter race, but still. Like,
I wonder if we get a little bit longer of a prop this week, and we can hit the under, because if it's like 7 or 7.5, that could be interesting. And then obviously,
one thing, with it being the last race to get into the championship 4, though, like you got to expect at least one. Like if I could bet this, yes or no, I would say yes. There is going to be an overtime in this race.
Okay, that will be something we'll want to track. Let's go to top 5, and because we mentioned there was a few names. I think Keselowski at 4-1 to top 5, and Almirola at 5-1 to top 5 are both compelling options for me.
Yeah, I like Keselowski. Like it's disgusting saying it for me because every time I've been on him, he's wound up ruining my card. But this is a guy, he ran really well last week. Like I said, RFK is looking really good. He's done incredibly well at Martinsville in the past. They're finally kind of hitting their stride. I think that penalty they were assessed really early in the season hurt them in the middle of the year, and they're finally kind of recovering from that. And it's shown on track. So I like him. And if you're going to go with Keselowski, in my opinion, I would also throw the dart on Chris Buescher, who's got a little bit of a longer number to top 5 at plus 550 at the Bet River. So I mean, I guess it's the same at DK, but I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, I think I'd rather do Austin Dillon, to be honest, but that's where my head's at. Let's go look at some matchups. Logano versus Ryan Blaney getting a minus 105. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, but I cannot put that on a card. Like, I don't like Logano enough to bet against Blaney.
Truex over Logano. Brad K over Tyler Reddick.
See, that's an interesting number considering Tyler Reddick's outright number is shorter than Brad Keselowski.
Yeah. I'm going to add that.
This is not good though. That we're both on the number 6 this week. He's gonna turn into Ryan Newman and be the first guy that wrecks out. Guaranteed.
I mean, based on my track record, that would make the most sense.
Yeah.
William Byron plus 100 over Denny Hamlin. How do we feel about that?
I don't know, man. It's hard to go against Hamlin. Like the veteran presence in a race that he knows he has to finish well. So I think like risk assessment early will be there, and they're going to make sure that they're there at the end, not taking risks early.
No.
It's almost like a play. If you could find any sort of like live matchup betting, I think there's going to be a lot of money to be made here, because I think some of those veteran guys or playoff drivers are going to be cautious early on in terms of not taking that many risks to avoid any wrecks or anything.
Yep. Adding Ross Chastain plus 160 over Chase Elliott. That's just a good number. I know Elliott's been great. I think he could absolutely win this race. I think he could run away with it. But getting plus 160 on Chastain, who's been really rock solid the past few weeks, and a guy that should be looking to finish really strong to lock in his playoff run, I think makes sense.
I love Ryan Blaney, but Christopher Bell plus 155 over Blaney, I think makes too much sense. I think Bell has finished inside the top 6 in 3 of the last 5 short tracks since the end of last year. So Bell, who's been one of the most consistent drivers in the Cup Series, at plus 155 over anybody is not something to pass up.
Yep. This is interesting. So Larson's a plus 110 to against Truex, and a minus 105 against Chastain. I don't know. It just seems maybe I'm making too much off of 1 week and kind of overvaluing Larson on the season, but it's just interesting to see. What about this one? Dinger, we talked a little bit about him. Plus 100.
Already added, my friend.
You just lead a horse to water and he starts to drink.
Yeah, I love that play. Like, AJ Allmendinger is somebody who was curious that he didn't have a ride. I know he's a little bit crazy on track, but like he's a really good driver. And at this stages of their career, like I would much rather go with a guy with Allmendinger's skill over Chase Briscoe, who cannot put like a string of good finishes together to save his life.
Yep. Noah Gragson over Ty Gibbs.
I don't know if I can go there again. I don't.
Like a smash. I don't know. Let's go over to DraftKings. Let's see if there's anything interesting over there.
We got to get our. We got to make a poll bet. We've been doing it for like the last 4 or 5 weeks. So.
Yep. Let's go look at pole position. Chase Elliott 6-1, Hamlin 7-1, Willie B at 8-1. Briscoe being up here is weird, but okay. Go off, King. Truex at 10, Almirola at 15. Dinger at 30, Dillon at 40.
I don't know if they got that kind of one lap speed though.
Bubba after a week off.
I worry about how he's going to come into this weekend. Honestly, I don't mind Logano at 9-1. I think that's a pretty good number. I think Blaney at 10-1. I think both those Penske guys make a lot of sense. If they kind of return to form, they've looked pretty good over the last few races, Logano especially. And they've shown a lot of speed coming into this weekend. So I think they could definitely put together a 1-lap run that could get them on the pole. So screw it. I'm gonna add Logano. It's gross, but
My God.
I'm not betting the favorite.
You really have lost it, haven't you?
Yes.
All right, let's see. So when we were here last time, it was Chase Elliott, Almirola, Cole Custer, Chris Buescher, William Byron, Kevin Harvick, Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson, Brad Keselowski, and the Gilly Gang himself, Todd Gilliland.
Ooh.
Christopher Bell at 9-1.
He's the qualifying king, man.
I'm gonna go Seabell. Pole 9. And I'm gonna go Martin Truex. You know what? I'm gonna do Almirola. At 15-1.
Ooh.
They'll call him the Eric Almapola.
If he gets on the pole, we're definitely fading him in DK. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%. Let's go to constructor manufacturer. So we have Chase Elliott, obviously a big top Chevy. Maybe not, but that's almost more interesting to me than the plus 650 to win the whole race.
Yeah, but I mean, we've seen he's had a bunch of issues, so it's hard to looking at these numbers, Allmendinger at 15-1.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
That's like a
Austin
quarter
Dillon
unit
at
play.
20 is actually, I don't hate that either.
I mean, Chastain, I think of the top 4 guys is the best value in my opinion with him being in the playoffs outside of Kyle Larson. I'd much rather go to him than Larson or Byron at 3.
Brad Keselowski at 12-1 to top Ford. I don't hate that.
Yeah, but
Almirola at 15.
I can't get too exposed with Keselowski. I can't be rooting for him to do that. Like, I'm okay if he finishes top 10. That's fine. I'm not going to be cheering for that. It could just happen.
Martin Truex plus 290. That doesn't feel that good. Like, I feel like you need better odds. Kyle Busch at 5-1.
Of those guys, it's clear the only guy I would even get to is Busch, honestly.
Yeah. I'm all set there.
Yeah, those aren't the greatest.
No. Let me make sure this is ready to go. All right, Brian, should we review the card, give the people a best bet, and we'll get ready to get out of here?
Let's do it.
All right. So, as you could see, I only have one outright. There will be probably one, maybe 2 more. Truex at 10-1. I will go Austin Dillon at plus 150 to top 10. I have Eric Almirola at plus 140 to top 10. I have Brad K at 4-1 to top 5. Almirola at top 5 at 5-1. I have Keselowski over Reddick, Chastain over Elliott, Christopher Bell over Ryan Blaney, and my 2 pole bets are Christopher Bell at 9-1 and Eric Almirola at 15-1. Brian, recap your card and let me know your best bet.
Malcolm must not have liked any of those ways.
He didn't like what I just said, apparently. He is being a little toad right now.
So I only have one outright, just like Kyle at the moment. That's Chase Elliott, the favorite at plus 650. My top 10s, I'm a little exposed here. I have both RFK drivers, Keselowski and Chris Buescher. Going with Eric Almirola at plus 140. Austin Dillon again at plus 150. And then for my matchups, I'm going to go with AJ Allmendinger over Chase Briscoe. Christopher Bell over Ryan Blaney, mostly because of the number, but also I think that both of these guys can perform well, but well enough to where Bell can finish ahead of them and they both advance possibly. And then Chris Buescher over Bubba Wallace. And then I have Joey Logano on the pole, which is disgusting to say. For my best bet this week, I'm going to go with another top 10, a number that is a lot shorter than I would prefer to get it at, but I'm going to go with Chris Buescher at plus 140. This is a guy that's ran really well at short tracks. I tweeted out a little bit ago before we started recording here. This guy has a 15th or better finish. Yeah, it's not a top 10, but that means he's right there in 5 of the last 6 Martinsville races. Like, he's running extremely well. He finished 3rd at Richmond. He won the Bristol race. This guy is too damn good to continue like run in the mid-teens. I think he's going to get the top 10, even if you want to throw a dart, top 5. But Chris Buescher, top 10, plus 140, my best bet as we sit here recording on Wednesday night.
I love it. For my best bet, I'm going to go with a matchup, or not a matchup. I'm going to go with a top 10 bet. I'm going to go with the guy who qualified second, who got a top 10 when we were here last time. I'm going to go with the guy who was really strong at Richmond, despite starting 32nd. I am taking the top 10 number of Mr. Eric Almirola at plus 140. I think he has another really strong race. I don't know that he's necessarily going to win, but a top 5 consideration. I get him at a top 10 at plus 140. I'm very happy to do that. That will be my best bet this week. Brian and I will be back in your feed on Sunday morning to break down all that is post qualifying. We'll have DraftKings lineups and talk, and we'll also have more best bets, update our betting card with the moving numbers, and hopefully find some more winners. That is Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. If you enjoyed the show, smash the thumbs up, hit the like button, subscribe to the feed. Go check out our NFL picks show if you are into betting college and or NFL, and we will talk to you guys next time.